It has been quite the week. Fan favorite, The Acolyte. See you later, season 2, because you're not happening.
Welcome to Unleashed. And don't forget to join us on Patreon for early access and exclusive content. Here are the guys.
Hey everyone, welcome to Unleashed. I'm James. Thanks for stopping by. Don't forget, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff that YouTube wants you to do for algorithm things. Anyway, Acolyte, like I said, was poop canned earlier this week. Monday, we had a topic to talk about on our Flying Casual live show at 8 p.m. Eastern, and just before, like an hour before, it happened a few hours before, but I read it an hour before. The Acolyte was canceled for season 2, making it the first first Star Wars show to be canceled at Disney Plus. Willow, the Lucasfilm show, was not only canceled, it was dug. They dug 6 feet and they buried it alive. And if you want to watch it, you can't. It doesn't matter. You can't even buy it. It's just they struck it from the record. The Willow show does not exist. And I'm curious, I know we talked about this a little bit on Flying Casual, if they would do that with the Acolyte, and most people said no. I don't. It's weird. It's like, because they do things canonically on that show that really rub people the wrong way. Not me. I don't get. There are things that would bother me. They didn't do it on that show. Kiadi Monday. Anyway, I don't want to get into that stuff. But this could be a way for them to say, you know what, if we bury this, if we take it off Disney Plus and it ceases to exist, then you can say all those little things that people weren't happy with didn't happen, and you can go back and retcon it if you ever wanted to. I've seen a lot of people who are very happy that these stories can live on in books and comics, and that's great if you're happy about that, but that is like, I don't know, that's like you're a major league ball player and they put you down to T-ball. And I'm an author. I have a book. We've talked about my Cape Side Bay. Buy it. Capes, CAP''S Side Bay. If you like Jaws, if you like Super 8, if you like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it's Jaws and Close Encounters combined is what it is. That's what it is. Anyway, so no disrespect to that. I love comics. Who doesn't? I grew up with comics. I love them. I have friends. Brock, co-host podcast, loves comics. That's his life is comics. He's at Fan Expo this weekend. It's nothing against those. It is like you go from Disney Plus and then you're like, but the story will continue in that. That's weak sauce to me. I don't like that. I don't appreciate that. Again, though, this is a show, and we're going to talk about the topic, don't worry, but this is a show where they had a massive budget. I know somebody said that, I think it was Dale said, that it was even to the Andor budget. The Andor budget was bigger, but it had 12 episodes versus 8. But I think so either they're equal or it was bigger than Andor, and it was the biggest budget of them all. Book of Boba Fett, which I'm one of the 7 people who liked it, had $105 million budget for, what was it, 6 or 8 episodes, whatever it was. This show had $180 million budget. That is almost an entire show more. And again, Andor had 200 and something million. And the issue is this is a streaming show. Where are you going to make this money back? People weren't joining Disney Plus to watch The Acolyte. I did, but people weren't doing that. People would leave and watch it, on are they still torrents where you maybe a stream site or whatever, and then people already had Disney Plus for watching it. People weren't getting Disney Plus for the show. I think that became evident, and the people that did have Disney Plus were not watching the show anyway. And so because of all those factors, this show has, it's gone. It's never coming back. Will we see these characters again? I doubt it. Like, I still think, Plagueis, I wouldn't consider Plagueis a character in the show. I know Plagueis appeared on the show, but I would never consider Plagueis a character on the show. And if you wanted to delve into Plagueis at all in any capacity, you could still do that quite easily without even worrying about these characters. Kemir, the Stranger, cool mask, cool fights, cool light. I like his lightsaber quite a bit, but at the same time, I just don't think, I would definitely be up for seeing more of this character. I think he was a solid character when we got him. He wasn't in it enough. especially as a villain, he wasn't in it enough. I think, Heidi thinks he's the most fleshed out villain in Star Wars. Sort of putting words in your mouth. That might be not exactly what you quoted, but I mean, he is a strong villain. We just didn't get enough of him. I mean, the series I think would have been better and a lot better received had we followed him more. I thought Manny Jacinto was great in this show when he had material. Like the most scenes, most of the time, it was like, oh, this is cheesy, and he kind of brought it. And he was reading the same dialogue as everybody else, and he kind of brought it. So I think it would be a bummer to not see him return at all in any capacity. I know they pulled him out on D23, but I also think that Disney and Lucasfilm recognized that he was the standout of this show. I mean, Saul, you can say what you want about Saul, but Saul's character, he had his arc or whatever the hell that was. It was kind of junk, but he's dead. That character's dead. So really, you could probably position Chimera, the Stranger, whatever, into something else. I don't think Leslie Headland will be back in Star Wars, and if she is, it won't be for quite some time. I think she's on Rian Johnson Island, which still hasn't been canceled. The Acolyte season 2 has been canceled, but the Rian Johnson trilogy, for some reason, they're not going to say it's not happening. It's not happening. The minute The Last Jedi came out and everybody lost their minds, that trilogy was done. It was over. He's moved on. He's got his knives out and all that. So I don't think there's any hard feelings on any parties there. This one there might be. Apparently, there was talk. I think they were really pushing for a season 2 of The Acolyte. If you looked at Disney's social media the last little while, it was a lot of Acolyte crap being thrown in your face. A lot. So I say crap, but whatever. They were throwing a lot of Acolyte content in your face, like a lot of it. They really were pushing The Acolyte, which I actually think is good because that was the show. And when the show was over, that was still the most recent show. So you want to push it. Skeleton Crew's not out yet, not coming out yet. I think it might do them some good to maybe push the Skeleton Crew show a little bit more right now. Kind of push that the way you were pushing The Acolyte post-Acolyte, push it pre-Skeleton Crew. Let us know a little bit more about these characters. Don't keep everything so secretive. We know that these are kids. But don't tell us about Jude Law, fine. But these are kids living in Star Wars suburbia. So give us a little bit of it. Just throw it in our face. Let us see what this is all about, what we are in for. Because I'm really excited for that show. I thought that trailer was phenomenal, but you can put phenomenal trailers for anything. However, I didn't think the trailer for The Acolyte was that phenomenal. And anyway, The Acolyte getting poop can leads us to our topic today, which is Star Wars still big? Is Star Wars still the big bad of Hollywood? Does Star Wars rule the roost? Is that how it is? Remember, Star Wars was the be all. Like you went to go see Star Wars. Star Wars in the theater was an event. It was an event. The first 3 movies. The first one was obviously something different, and I wasn't around for the next 2. So I was alive anyway for the third one, but I wasn't there. The prequels, every single one of those, even though they were not well received at all, even though revisionist history tells you otherwise, they weren't very well received, but they were still an event. You had to go see these movies. Everybody felt. I remember I was working at a golf course when Revenge of the Sith came out. I was 20 or whatever, fresh out of college. And I remember the Revenge of the Sith came out, and I was all these people working at a golf course, which aren't necessarily your Star Wars fans to begin with. And we got to go see the Star Wars movie. And they were kind of like, but I didn't like Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones. I doubt they used the names, but they didn't like the other 2. But it was still something that they had to see. And it wasn't like modern day, like, oh, I got to go watch Agatha all along, so I understand Avengers 5. I'm just using those as an example. It was kind of like, they were still kind of hyped about it. They're still kind of very excited to go see how Vader became Vader. And then when the movie came out, I remember like these people that didn't like those movies were like thrilled. They're like, when the mask came down and Obi-Wan and everybody went nuts and they loved it. But it was an event. And in Force Awakens, that was so exciting. We were 10 years removed from having a Star Wars movie in theater, but now it's my era, right? Because the first passage of time, I was too young. I was 2 years old when Jedi came out, and then I was a teenager when Phantom Menace came out. So I lived with Star Wars, and then I got rid of Star Wars, and then special editions came in the theater, and I experienced Star Wars in the theater for the first time. So it was a cool vibe, but it felt very different from Force Awakens, because also I felt like when Revenge of the Sith ended, we were done. That was it for Star Wars. Clone Wars, the show came out, whatever, was in the theater for a bit, whatever. but that was it for Star Wars. And then Force Awakens came back, and it was like, here we go. And it wasn't just that. It was a here we go, because we knew we were getting new Star Wars for the foreseeable future in the theater. We knew we were getting Star Wars for the foreseeable future, right? That was what was promised to us. So it wasn't like this was a one-off. It wasn't like this was just 3. This was the beginning of something that at the time felt like it was going to be something special. And, the Red Sea parted, and some people think it's special still, and some people are on the other end that think it's a travesty of all travesties. And depending on where you are, that's how you feel. And I'm not going to get into that at all. But going into that movie was a lot of fun. And then obviously Rogue One was really cool, because we're like, all right. And that was different because it was the first spin-off. We didn't know how to experience that. And then Last Jedi came, and it was like, okay, we're going to get the answers now. We are going to get the answers. And we didn't. We got what we got. Some things were said, some things weren't. There was a lot of focus on Rey and Kylo in that movie, of course, adding fuel to the Reylo fire or whatever. Maybe not, maybe depending on how you viewed it. But I think that one really ended with the Reylo confirmation, which was, and then you have Solo, and then because of the reception of Last Jedi, Solo fizzled, and then Rise of Skywalker was exciting again, but it wasn't as and the movie aside, like whatever you think of the movie aside, going into it was like, we're going to go see, how this ends, but it still kind of felt like, all right, like there was something missing about that one that the first 3 in the Disney era had. And look, I've said this before, I love Solo. I think it's a great little film that nobody went to go see. Nobody saw Solo, and it sucks. And Disney is a corporation, and you can say, man, it's a Lucasfilm, but Lucasfilm is owned by Disney, and when something from Lucasfilm doesn't do well, doesn't appease the shareholders, you're out of here. Acolyte, you're out of here. Solo 2, you're out of here. Book of Boba Fett Season 2, you're out of here. Kenobi Season 2, you're out of here. Ahsoka Season 2, we're going to give it to you because Filoni makes those calls. So, you can't complain that the Acolyte was canceled. You can, obviously, but at the end of the day, the viewership wasn't there, and it didn't justify the money that was spent. I think that show could have probably been shot for a lot cheaper. Not that I'm a production manager or anything, but I imagine it could be. I still think there was some embezzling involved. I'm joking, of course. So it's canceled. Star Wars, the big guy in the room. The movies all but Solo made over $1 billion. It was the event film. We kept going and going and going, and now a show's canceled. People aren't happy with Ahsoka. People aren't happy with Book of Boba Fett. People aren't happy with Kenobi. People aren't happy with Andor. Some people weren't happy with Andor, right? It was slow. It was too adult. They swore. There's a lot of reasons to love Andor and a lot of reasons not to, depending on how you view Star Wars, which is another thing altogether, where how you view Star Wars, because I said this on Monday's show, everybody got into Star Wars from a different platform, right? A different avenue. We all kind of entered differently. I'm pretty sure I got in from the toys, others from the original movie, some from Droids and Ewoks cartoons, some from the prequels, some from the sequel. Like, we're all over the place. Everybody's an adult now. Everybody that got into Star Wars as a kid, that's not a kid now, has basically become an adult in the time that since The Force Awakens, and because it's been 9 years. So a 10-year-old's a 19-year-old. It's math. I guess they're still kids if you're under 10. But you know what I'm saying. They're like, teenagers don't care. And I'm not going to lie. I want to sit here and I want to say, no, Star Wars is the big daddy of the film franchises. And Marvel's Marvel and whatever. But Star Wars is a different beast from Marvel. But if you're comparing them, Marvel, even though Marvel's had its issues lately, it definitely takes Star Wars' cake, right? I'm not crazy in saying that and suggesting that, am I? Definitely Marvel. Absolutely Marvel. I don't know, these new Lord of the Rings movies coming out, but they might stand a chance. People still talk highly of the trilogy. I know the Hobbit movies were a little bit of a letdown for people, and the 60 frames was a choice. But maybe that's up there. Stranger Things. These streaming shows and series that I don't know about because I don't watch enough of them. Like, is Star Wars what it was? And maybe theatrically it is. And maybe even though I always kind of thought, oh man, Star Wars on streaming this is like George Lucas's dream. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Star Wars was always meant to be on the big screen, whether anyone knew it or not. Maybe that's where it belongs. Maybe that's where the stories work best. And maybe it's the budget and the time with the characters, and maybe that's it. And maybe audiences want to see it in the theater more than they want to see a cheapened version of it on their TVs. Because that's what, like, a lot of the arguments, for me, the big argument with the Acolyte is just the set design just didn't look good. It looked like styrofoam blocks and this and that. And then, of course, Boba Fett and Kenobi, it was the volume. And I think Mandalorian Season 1 and 2 utilized the volume very strongly. But I think I do. There are points, and I love Book of Boba Fett, but there are points in that show, and it's like Kenobi more than anything, where you're just like, man, I wish they just kind of put them on a set. But, of course, you're dealing with the show with the smaller budget. $105 million is not a small budget, but it is when you probably put all the other pieces into context. It's not that big a budget for what they were doing. So that's the problem. It's like the budget versus what you're giving us. Are they making sense? And I hear people always kind of, not always, they love the animated Star Wars stuff. And in animated Star Wars, it costs the same amount of money to do an explosion as it does have a character have a conversation with someone. And that's why I'm stealing from Roger Ebert. I'm paraphrasing from an old Roger Ebert review of, I think, Mask of the Phantasm or Iron Giant or something. Anyway, the point is that, the money that it costs to create these Star Wars shows and is not translating because that money, even though it's a lot, it's being stretched out thin with costumes and props and set deck and special effects and all that. Even though they dwindle it down to give you an affordable version of what they're doing, it's just not affordable. At the end of the day, it's just not affordable for them. So it's tough, and it's I always viewed these shows on Disney Plus as the novels that we got in the 90s, like the Legends novels that we got in the 90s. And that's kind of how I justify it. So whenever I watched it, I was never disappointed with the quality necessarily. As long as it didn't take me out, I wasn't necessarily disappointed with quality or this or that or the story, because for the most part, I just kind of viewed it as I would be reading this as a book 30 years ago, but now I get to watch it. And maybe my mentality is wrong on that. Maybe the way I'm viewing it, maybe I should be viewing it as these should be on par with the movies. They should be. The problem is, why would I go see a movie then if these are on par with the movies? And the bigger question is, are these shows hurting the future movies? Because the Mando and Grogu movie, I think a lot of people are saying this. I think it's only going to cost $120 million, so it's going to make its money back, especially if the trailers leading up to it are awesome. But if the movie, if people look at it and they're like, oh, yeah, but they're on Disney Plus, why would I go to the theater to watch it when I can watch it on Disney Plus? Well, this is a new one. Yeah, and then it's going to be on Disney Plus. So I'm really concerned with that, as like have they overdone Star Wars? I think they have. And the thing is, I've liked most of what we've gotten, but there's been a lot of it. And, and now, are they going to be afraid to try different time periods now with the Acolyte not doing so hot? Did that turn people off of Star Wars? I really doubt it. And I don't know if it was I don't think there was a lot of woke stuff for the first few episodes. I don't think that turned people off. I think there was just something about it that you watched it and you just felt like it just didn't hit. And a lot of viewers stopped after episode 3. And episode 3, while I thought it had some cool ideas in episode 3, that episode was just like, what did I watch? I was just sitting there with this disgusted look on my face. It was like the first time I watched Rebel Moon. It was like, what am I seeing right now? I didn't enjoy it at all. And then, later on they added that song to the show, and you're just like, what are you doing to it? And so the question, of course, is Star Wars still big? Is Star Wars still as important as it once was to pop culture? Yeah, because of the originals more than anything, and memes are keeping it alive. That's the only reason why anyone cares about Ki-Adi-Mundi, is because of his stupid meme. But I don't think people are flocking to it anymore. We'll see when Mando and Grogu comes out. It's been so long since we got one in the movies. It'll be 7 years, I think, when that thing comes out, or 6 years, 7 years. So we'll see how that goes. But it's not must-see TV. on streaming. People aren't sitting down to watch The Acolyte. They barely did that for the first episode. It was in the top 10, sure. And then it squeaked back in the top 10 for the last episode at number 10. Star Wars, and look, this might sound biased because this is a Star Wars show, a Star Wars channel, and we do a Star Wars podcast, but Star Wars should never be number 10. Star Wars should be number 1. And if it's not number 1, it should be competing for number 1. It should be up there. It shouldn't be the Borderlands of the movies right now on TV. It should be number 1. It should be, if it went head to head with a Marvel movie, Marvel might beat it, but Star Wars needs to be there. It needs to be neck and neck. And at some point, you think that it should surpass it because it's Star Wars. It's epic. Like Marvel movies are fun action, but Star Wars is epic. Lord of the Rings has epic, but Star Wars, like we should never be content with it being mediocre. And maybe this is maybe Lucasfilm, Disney, they use this as, to look in the mirror and see this for what it is. And maybe they take a step in the right direction for it. And they say, maybe, and they did a reset with the MCU, and it sounds like things are going better there. Like the Captain America movie thing looks good. I thought that trailer was pretty good. And I haven't been a critic of Marvel because there's been too many of them lately, but I haven't really, I haven't been crazy about Marvel stuff since I like Endgame was fine. I didn't really like Infinity War. I wasn't crazy about it. I was excited going to see it, and I saw it the first time. I was like, that was great. I saw it the second time. I was like, I didn't like it as much because of there was the space dogs. I'm not gonna lie, the space dogs at the end when they all like, the space dogs are coming to kill everyone, and you're like, but the Avengers, like none of them are going to get killed by a space dog. Anyway, it's like 20 minutes of space dogs for no reason. I don't like that stuff, and I don't want that stuff with Star Wars either. But Star Wars needs to be like, Star Wars is not the big guy in the room anymore. It's just not. It's unfortunate. But a Star Wars show should never get canceled. It should never be 10th in ratings on the last episode. The finale of a Star Wars show should always be number 1. Always be number 1, especially a finale that was like that show, for whatever you thought of it, it was leading to something. And that's why it came back in the top 10, because people were like, well, what was this show leading into? And it still didn't do well enough to get higher than 10th in the top 10 at the very end. I hope my numbers are right, or I just sound like an idiot. I mean, I sound like an idiot anyway. I know. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. And this is disappointing. I don't think Star Wars is must-see TV. I don't even know if it's must-see movies anymore. I think, we got 2 very strong seasons of Mandalorian. I really like Book of Boba Fett, but I know how people feel about that. And what? I think even if you didn't like Book of Boba Fett, it was so early on. I think you can give it a pass. They tried something, and maybe they just missed the mark. And Acolyte, they tried something. I think they missed the mark, but they tried to do too much. Reel it in. Is this a story of a new Sith apprentice with Plagueis, or Plagueis watching over? I don't know. Is it a story about the Jedi and how the Jedi aren't decent human beings, or whatever I guess they're not all human beings, or decent entities in the galaxy? Like, what are you trying to convey? Is it about twins? Is it about a virgins in the Force? Is it about space witches? What is this show about? Because you only have 8 episodes, and you only have a half hour to do it in those 8 episodes. And I'm going to say this until the cows come home, but I watched that Ninja Turtles, Tales of the Ninja Turtles show, and I watched Batman Cape Crusader. And for all the faults and flaws that those 2 shows may or may not have, Ninja Turtles is nearly perfect. The one flaw that they did not have was length of episode and what happened in each episode, because they were very, very fulfilling. Even if you don't like what you got, it was a beginning, a middle, and every episode felt like it ended, and it bled into the next one wonderfully. Like, I was like, okay, the next one picks up where that one left off, but it wasn't like to be continued like we've been getting. So you've got to make your shows and not movies cut up into pieces. And I think the biggest question is why? Why are you making this show? And why am I watching this show? And I don't think The Acolyte had an answer for any of that. I think Book of Boba Fett, for all of its flaws, I think it had an answer for that. I think Mandalorian season 1 and 2 had an answer for that. I think season 3 had an answer for that. Actually, if you think about it, it knew it. You might not have liked what it was doing or where it was going, but it knew the whole time. Kenobi, I think, kind of, it kind of knows, but kind of doesn't know, but kind of knows, but kind of doesn't know. And Ahsoka had no clue. I would argue Ahsoka was more clueless than the Acolyte when it came to why anything in that show existed. Maybe we'll find out in season 2, which is fine, except it's not fine. You shouldn't need to find out in the second season when you're never promised a second season to begin with. Now, if it was like Andor, where like we just shot season 1, we're shooting season 2, I'd be okay, a little bit more okay with it. But Andor knew it was going with the whole time. So it gets frustrating, and Star Wars is not the big franchise that it was. I think it always will be in retrospect and in references, like Jedi and Yoda are the big references. I mean, you still hear people be like, "Oh, you're like a Jedi." No one really references Sith like that in your day-to-day life, right? It's Jedi and Yoda get it most of the time, Force and stuff like that. And so I don't think, I know a lot of the haters want to say that Disney's killed that. I don't think they've killed that, but they haven't. But we haven't boosted it at all, and it's not what it was. It's not. The new movies coming out. I got to go to the pop-up shop. The new shows coming out. Let's go see what collectibles are around. There's not that anymore. And I mean, I'm older now, so I want to look for collectibles anyway. I have a daughter. I've got to spend all my money on. But when the movies came out, I went and I bought the Elite series during the Force Awakens era. I didn't get the Last Jedi ones because I didn't have a job, but I got all the ones for the Force Awakens, and I love doing it. It was fun, and everything we've gotten, I've never felt that urge to do it again, and it's unfortunate. And maybe the movies will bring it back. Maybe this pause on Acolyte, and maybe it'll be Skeleton Crew. But right now, Star Wars isn't the big. And if it was the biggie, my final point, if it was the biggie, the Skeleton Crew trailer would have, I don't know what the numbers are in that trailer, but it would have bigger numbers. We would know the numbers. We knew the numbers for Deadpool and Wolverine trailer, which is a movie I know, but we would know those numbers. I'm sure we'll know the Stranger Things numbers when that comes out. And so that's it. I'm going to leave it with this. Do you guys think Star Wars is still big? I think it's large, but I don't know what constitutes big. But I don't think it should never be 10th. It should never be 10th. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, like, subscribe. We'll see you again. I'll be back here next week doing it. Andrew Fantasia and Heidi, executive producer Heidi, will be live Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. Hope you can join them. Talk away in the live chat. I might be there in the live chat. We'll see. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, may the force of others be with you.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.